The last thing Daniel Cruz ate was the best meal of his life. He told his wife that, texted her from the table. "Babe, this place is unreal, saving up to bring you here." And she screenshotted and showed it to the detective 8 days later, when Daniel still hadn't come home and his car was found on a logging road outside Ashford, Oregon, with the engine cold and the driver's seat pushed back the way Daniel always pushed it, all the way because he was 6'2" and needed the room. The text was timestamped 9:47 p.m., and Daniel Cruz was never seen again after 9:47 p.m. But the restaurant, Soil, chef-owned, 14 seats, 3 Michelin stars, the most exclusive reservation in the Pacific Northwest, had no record of Daniel Cruz ever dining there. No reservation, no credit card transaction, no record of any kind. 14 seats. Every one of them documented, every guest accounted for, except Daniel. So how did he get inside? And more importantly, what did he see that made him so dangerous to the man running that kitchen? Nina Castillo had been a food journalist for 11 years and had eaten at restaurants that required passport-level verification to book, that seated 6 people per night, that operated out of unmarked buildings in industrial districts and served menus that read like poetry and cost more than her monthly rent. She had never been refused by Soil. She had never tried. Soil did not take applications. Soil did not have a website. Soil existed as a physical address, 4 Halcyon Road, Ashford, Oregon, and as a reputation that moved through the food world the way serious reputations move, in whispers, in the spaces between published words, in conversations at other serious restaurants where serious people leaned close and said, "Have you heard?" and then said the name like it was a secret they were deciding whether to share. What Nina knew about Soil, she had assembled over 3 years from fragments. Chef Elias Vorn was 47, Norwegian-American, trained in Copenhagen, then Tokyo, then 2 years in the French Pyrenees under a chef whose name appeared in no publication because he had never permitted it. Vorn had opened Soil 9 years ago, with no announcement, no press release, no soft opening. He had simply begun cooking, and word had reached the right people, and the right people had told other right people, and within 18 months there was a waiting list that didn't officially exist for a restaurant that officially didn't exist, and somehow reservations were made and kept, and the meals described afterward in hushed and reverent terms that Nina, who was professionally skeptical of reverence, had nonetheless found herself believing. 3 Michelin stars arrived in year 4. Vorn's response, relayed through a single representative, was 2 words: unnecessary recognition. Nina had been assigned the Soil piece by her editor at the Culinary Record on a Monday morning in late September, 3 weeks after Daniel Cruz disappeared. The assignment had nothing to do with Daniel Cruz. Her editor did not know about Daniel Cruz. Nobody outside of the Ashford County Sheriff's Department and Daniel Cruz's wife, Pamela, knew about Daniel Cruz in connection to Soil, because the connection had not been made public, because the Sheriff's Department was being very careful about what it released. She accepted the assignment because it was Soil, and you did not decline Soil. She did not know on that Monday morning that accepting it would put her inside a criminal investigation that had already consumed 14 months of a detective's life and produced almost nothing. She did not know about Detective Sergeant Rose Ibarra. She would. The building at 4 Halcyon Road looked like nothing. That was the first thing. Nina had driven 40 minutes from the nearest town. Ashford itself was barely a town, a population of 600 set into the Cascade foothills, the kind of place that existed to serve the logging industry and had kept existing after the logging industry left out of sheer geographic stubbornness. And the building at the end of the unmarked road was a converted timber mill. Single-story, dark reclaimed wood siding, no sign, no external lighting except a single lamp above a plain wooden door. She sat in her rental car for a moment. The forest pressed in on both sides of the road. Old-growth Douglas fir, the trunks dark and enormous, the canopy so dense overhead that the October sky was reduced to fragments. It was 4 in the afternoon, and already the light was going. She got out and went to the door. A woman opened it before she knocked. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back, a white linen apron over a simple black dress. Her name, she said, was Marin. She was the front of house, the sommelier, and the only non-kitchen staff. She said this without apology, as a fact about how the restaurant worked. "Miss Castillo," Marin said, "Chef has been expecting you." The interior was not what Nina expected, which was itself a form of mastery, the ability to subvert expectation before the guest has fully formed it. The dining room was a single open space, the old mill's timber bones exposed overhead, the ceiling 20 feet high, 14 tables, each seating 2, arranged with generous space between them. The floor was dark concrete, polished to a matte finish. The walls were unfinished timber hung with nothing, no art, no decoration, no distraction. The light came from candles, real ones, thick and unscented, placed at each table and at intervals along the windowsills. The windows were large and looked directly into the forest, which at this hour was already darkening toward black, the trees close enough to touch through the glass. It was, Nina thought, the most serious room she had ever been in. Serious the way a library is serious, or an operating theater, a room that had organized itself entirely around a single purpose and eliminated everything that interfered with that purpose. "Chef will join you before service," Marin said. "Can I bring you something while you wait?" Nina asked for water and took out her notebook. She looked at the window and the darkening forest beyond it. She thought about the 14 tables, 14 seats, and her editor's voice. Exclusive piece, full access. They've never allowed press inside before, which meant Elias Vorn had to region from his own to let her in, which raised a question she hadn't been able to answer since the assignment landed. Why now? Why, after 9 years of complete media silence, had Vorn agreed to this? What did he want her to see? Or the question that arrived quietly. Settling into the room the way darkness was settling into the forest outside, what did he want her not to see? Elias Vorn was smaller than his reputation. Nina had expected something imposing, the physicality that serious chefs sometimes carry, the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding a kitchen. What she found was a lean, quiet man in his late 40s, fair-skinned, close-cropped gray hair, the kind of still that reads as either profound calm or profound control, and is usually both. He wore a plain white chef's coat, no name, no insignia. His hands, she noticed immediately, were extraordinary, large for his frame, scarred from decades of heat and blade work. The hands of someone for whom cooking was entirely physical and entirely serious. He sat across from her at the table nearest the kitchen. "You want to know what we do here," he said, not a question. "I want to know everything," Nina said. "Everything is too much," Vorn said. "I'll tell you what's useful." What was useful, according to Elias Vorn, was this: soil operated on a single principle, that the most honest food comes from complete accountability for every element, where it came from, what it was, how it lived before it became a meal. That the modern restaurant's relationship with its ingredients was fundamentally dishonest, that distance between source and plate was a form of deception, and that his entire project was the elimination of that distance. "I source within 12 miles, he said. "Everything?" "Everything." Nina wrote it down. "How do you handle protein, meat specifically?" A fractional shift crossed his face, gone before she could name it. "We work with what the land provides," he said. "Local farms, local hunters under license agreement, everything traceable, everything documented." "Can I see the documentation?" A pause, exactly 1 second longer than comfortable. "After service," he said, "I'll have Marin prepare everything you need." He stood. "Service begins at 7. I'd ask that you approach the meal without preconception. Try to receive it without the professional habit of analysis. Just eat." He went into the kitchen. Nina sat in the empty dining room and looked at what she'd written. Everything within 12 miles, everything traceable, everything documented. She underlined documented twice. Then she wrote one question beneath it and circled it. Then why is there no record of Daniel Cruz? The guests arrived at 7, 12 of them, 6 couples, variously aged, all carrying the particular quality of people who had been waiting a long time for something and arrived trying not to show it. Marin seated them with practiced efficiency. Candles were lit, wine was poured. The first course arrived, then the second, then the third. And on the third, something shifted. The flavor was wrong in a way that felt almost familiar, and across the room another man set his fork down. Neither of them moved. Neither of them finished the plate. Nina excused herself, found the hidden signs near the kitchen, the altered floor, the heavy ventilation, cold storage below. She returned, finished nothing, and stepped outside to call the sheriff. "I believe I'm standing on top of the reason he disappeared." Within minutes, units arrived, and what they found beneath soil was not food, but evidence, organized, preserved, undeniable, tied to years of disappearances, including Daniel Cruz. The investigation lasted 14 months, revealing a system built on deception, false documentation, and a truth so disturbing it was never publicly detailed, only reflected in the charges that led to Elias Vaughn's conviction and life sentence. Nina's article exposed everything, not just the crime, but the deeper horror. That trust had been weaponized, that every guest who sat in that room had unknowingly placed their faith in someone who saw that faith as opportunity. In the end, the restaurant was demolished, the forest reclaimed the land, and those who knew the truth were left with one lasting instinct. Sometimes survival is as simple as recognizing when something feels wrong and having the courage to put your fork down.